Welcome back to Altelly Car, the channel where we dive into global events, military comparisons, and the strategies shaping international conflicts. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community that looks beyond the headlines to uncover the details that really matter. Today we're breaking down a fascinating and complex subject: US warships versus the Venezuelan military and navy. This is not just a comparison of ships and weapons, it's about power projection, geopolitics, history, and the realities of modern warfare. So sit back, because we're going to explore this in detail. When we talk about the United States Navy, we're looking at the most powerful naval force on Earth. With over 290 deployable ships, including 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, dozens of amphibious assault ships, destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and logistics vessels, the U.S. Navy is not just about numbers, but about global reach. The U.S. can project power anywhere in the world, including the Caribbean where Venezuela sits. In contrast, Venezuela's navy is much smaller, with only a handful of frigates, patrol boats, and submarines, mostly aging equipment acquired decades ago. This difference is massive, but the story is more nuanced than just comparing size. Let's start with the United States warships. A key component in any operation near Venezuela would be the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These warships are armed with the Aegis combat system, capable of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles, intercepting enemy aircraft and missiles, and supporting amphibious operations. Destroyers alone bring more firepower than the entire Venezuelan fleet. Alongside destroyers, the U.S. could deploy amphibious assault ships like the USS Wasp or USS America, which carry helicopters, vertical takeoff aircraft like the F-35B, and Marines for potential landing operations. Even without sending a full carrier strike group, this combination gives the U.S. Navy overwhelming capabilities. Now, what does Venezuela bring to the table? Venezuela's navy is officially called the Bolivarian Navy of Venezuela. It has several frigates, like the Lupo-class frigates acquired from Italy in the 1980s. These ships are aging and have suffered from lack of modernization, maintenance, and funding. Venezuela also has a small number of submarines, specifically German-built Type 209 submarines, which theoretically could pose a threat to U.S. surface ships if used effectively. Submarines are often called the Great Equalizer because even a smaller navy can use them to harass larger fleets. But in practice, Venezuela's submarines are often out of service due to mechanical and training issues. Another important part of Venezuela's defense is its coastal missile systems and air defenses. The country has Russian-made equipment like the Buk and S-300 missile systems, as well as anti-ship missiles such as the Russian Kh-31 and possibly the Bastion system. These could make a direct amphibious assault risky and force the U.S. to rely on air strikes and standoff weapons before moving closer. Venezuela's geography gives it some natural advantages, with dense coastal areas and choke points that could be defended if the Navy and Air Force were fully operational. But here is where the imbalance becomes obvious. The U.S. Navy is not just a fleet of ships, it is backed by the world's most advanced surveillance, satellite, and intelligence systems. The U.S. can track Venezuelan ships and aircraft long before they get close. American destroyers can strike targets hundreds of kilometers inland with cruise missiles, neutralizing command centers, radars, and airfields before Venezuelan forces have a chance to respond. In addition, the U.S. Navy operates alongside the Air Force, Marines, and Army. Meaning that any conflict would not just be ship against ship, but a combined arms effort. To understand this more deeply, let's imagine a scenario. Suppose tensions rise in the Caribbean and the United States decides to send a naval task force to pressure Venezuela. The task force might include 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, 1 amphibious assault ship with Marines, and supporting supply vessels. As they approach, Venezuelan frigates and patrol craft would scramble to intercept. On paper, this looks like a standoff, but in reality, the Venezuelan ships lack modern radar and missile systems to compete. Within minutes, U.S. destroyers could launch precision missiles to disable those ships from a safe distance. Venezuelan submarines, if deployed, could attempt to close in, but the U.S. has advanced anti-submarine helicopters, sonar systems, and P-8 Poseidon aircraft capable of hunting them down. The likely outcome would be that Venezuelan vessels retreat to port or get destroyed early in the engagement. However, we shouldn't underestimate the challenges of such an operation. Even if the U.S. has overwhelming power, conducting military operations near Venezuela involves political, logistical, and humanitarian factors. Venezuela is not Iraq or Libya, it is in America's own hemisphere. Any action would have regional repercussions with neighbors like Colombia, Brazil, and Caribbean nations watching closely. Russia and China, both allies of Venezuela, could respond diplomatically or with military support such as arms sales and intelligence sharing. This means the conflict would not just be military but also geopolitical, with far-reaching consequences. Another factor is Venezuela's asymmetric warfare potential. The Venezuelan military has invested in fast attack craft, small patrol boats, and guerrilla-style tactics that could be used against a larger navy. These tactics involve swarming larger ships with smaller, faster boats, which can be difficult to defend against if carried out in coastal waters. Iran has used similar tactics in the Persian Gulf. While the U.S. Navy trains for such threats, it would still pose challenges in close-range encounters. Let's also consider the air dimension. Venezuela has Russian Su-30 fighter jets, which are advanced multi-role aircraft capable of carrying anti-ship missiles. In theory, these jets could launch strikes against U.S. ships. But without sufficient radar coverage, aerial refueling, and early warning systems, Venezuelan jets would face enormous difficulty engaging the U.S. Navy, especially against American F-18s, F-35s, and AWACS aircraft coordinating from regional bases. In almost every category, ships, submarines, aircraft, missiles, the United States holds the advantage. So why does this comparison matter? It matters because naval power is not just about fighting wars, it is about deterrence and influence. The mere presence of U.S. warships near Venezuelan waters sends a strong signal, even if no shots are fired. For Venezuela, its navy represents sovereignty and the ability to resist external pressure. Even though the Venezuelan navy is small and outdated, it serves as a symbol of independence and a potential thorn in the side of any invading force. Looking at the historical perspective, Venezuela once had one of the strongest navies in South America, particularly in the 1970s and 1980s. But years of political turmoil, economic crisis, and sanctions have weakened its ability to maintain or modernize its forces. Meanwhile, the United States has only expanded its global naval dominance. This contrast tells a story of two nations on very different paths, one struggling to maintain basic readiness, and the other investing billions into next-generation warships and aircraft. What does the future hold? For Venezuela, the priority is survival. With limited resources, they are unlikely to acquire new frigates or submarines anytime soon. Instead, they may focus on asymmetric tactics, small boats, coastal defenses, and alliances with countries like Russia and Iran to counterbalance the U.S. For the United States, the Caribbean is not the top priority compared to the Pacific or Europe, but maintaining control of its near abroad is always a key interest. If tensions escalate, the U.S. Navy is capable of dominating Venezuelan waters in a matter of days. But war is not just about who has the stronger fleet. It is about politics, strategy, and public opinion. A direct U.S. military intervention in Venezuela would be controversial, costly, and risky, even if militarily it looks one-sided. That's why most scenarios focus on deterrence, blockades, or limited strikes rather than a full-scale invasion. Still, by analyzing the naval balance, we can see how power is distributed and what each side brings to the table. In summary, the United States Navy represents overwhelming firepower, advanced technology, and global reach, while Venezuela's Navy represents national pride, limited defensive capability, and a potential asymmetric threat. In a direct confrontation, U.S. warships would almost certainly dominate, but the cost and consequences of such a conflict go far beyond ships and weapons. Thanks for watching Altelly Car. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global military and strategic topics. We'll continue to bring you content that explains the stories behind the headlines. Until next time, stay informed and stay curious.